Welcome back to the channel. It's February 23rd, 2025. For today, we'll be going back down to sunny Southern California and Shane Idleman, the NAR Dominionist extraordinaire, who provides so much material for the NAR that I find myself oftentimes gravitating toward his page, because there's so much that's just inherently wrong. Not only wrong from a truth-telling perspective, not only wrong from a political perspective, but more importantly, wrong from the perspective of why is a pastor constantly using 80% of his activity to promote carnality. Sometimes when he sticks to the Bible, he's fine. He is an advocate for fasting, and I have no reason to question whether or not his teachings on that have any issues. The problem is it's all wrapped up in this deification and worship of Donald Trump. Because this is what happened to Shane. Shane was once a respected biblical preacher, and then he got hit upside the head with the COVID Trump stick, and forced his church to open up in the middle of the pandemic. And then from that point on, he just, he's become a MAGA pastor. He doesn't see, and ironically, he kind of does see. Because, the last video I did on him a few days back, he had posted this little snippet from a sermon about how, idolatry is sneaky, and that, that he recognized that he was like spending too much time hanging on every word from the Trump administration and politics. So he was going to be taking a break from X, which apparently lasted, all of a day or two, because now he's back in full force. And one of the posts that he made today is not only vile and disgusting in its inaccuracy and what it represents in terms of the most despicable facets of our society. But remember, and keep in mind as we go through the story, he's reposting this on his Facebook page where he cosplays as a pastor. So if you're going to, if he was just a political operative, it'd be bad enough, but at least it would fit, but if you're going to preach salvation on one hand and then completely lie and distort on the other hand and post things that are clearly absurdly ridiculous. Unfortunately, many years ago, I think it was Kellyanne Conway who made the infamous line that, the Trump administration, dealt in alternative facts. There's no such thing as alternative facts, beloved. Things are either true, well, they're not true. And the things that Shane Idleman posts and supports are factually untrue. They're designed to support only the carnal politics that he agrees with. But the problem is, again, is as a pastor, he presents this to his sheep. And then you see even the comments from his sheep are filled with vitriol and hate and assuming that what he's posting is true. And as we'll see, it's decidedly not only untrue, but it's pretty vile. So I remember, I had done a previous video, I believe, where he had posted something about Jake Lang. Jake Lang was released after 900 days, supposedly in solitary confinement, as a Jan 6 rioter, and Shane posted this clip. Imagine 900 days pardoned in solitary, pardoned J6 political prisoner. Jake Lang lived it. Jake Lang wasn't a political prisoner. Jake Lang beat cops with an aluminum baseball bat. That's what Jake Lang did. Okay. So, and the reason why he was in jail as long as he was is he kept putting off the trial. His lawyer kept putting off the trial because he was angling for a Trump pardon. And he wanted to wait to see what the election results were. And sure enough, Trump got elected. And sure enough, he got the pardon he wanted. And now he's out pretending that he's the victim. Once again, he beat cops with an aluminum baseball bat and one of their own shields. There was a Um, a crazy picture of him, Jake Long. Images. Oh, Jan 6. Yeah, that guy. So this is the guy. That's not even the worst one. There was a picture where he was absolutely apoplectic. Here he is, in the height of the riots. Again, you can have your political opinions all you want, but the reality is Jake Long is not a political prisoner. He was a criminal, broke the law. He tried to kill police officers, or at least seriously injured them. And if you stand for that in general, that's your own problem. But if you stand for that as a Christian, I fear for your salvation. If you stand for that as a Christian pastor, my guess is you're a hireling. My guess is that you've sold out Christ for your carnal politics. But it gets worse, because we reported on that already. But today, he posts another video of a different Jan 6, quote-unquote, victim. And this guy is Brian Mock. So now, I think it's important that we'll listen to what Mr. Mock has to say. Now, the post that Shane's making is a video from CPAC, from the Conservative Political Action Committee annual conference of crazies. I mean, this is where they had a gold statue of Donald Trump that they were all bowing down to a few years back. So, but because Shane Idleman, has traded in the gospel for the Republican Party, he thinks nothing of it. He thinks this is news. He thinks, in fact, his caption here is, "Wow, watch this." It's a clip hosted by Steve Bannon, who I would say is a political provocateur, but that's an insult to political provocateurs. Steve Bannon is another criminal who's been in jail for his crimes and probably deserves to go back to jail for his crimes. And what he does is his profession is to distort the reality. Okay, it's those of us who watched January 6th unfold know full well that these were not tourists. This was a riot that assaulted police officers. I believe 2 died from that day. Many more permanently traumatized and permanently injured. I think one lost an eye. Again, if you want to stand for that, if you want to buy this absurd narrative that they somehow were just like fighting for freedom, the reality is that they were fighting for the lies that their idol Donald Trump was selling about the 2020 election. Again, he lost by 7 million votes. Every recount confirmed it. Recounts in Republican states confirmed it. You saw the difference in 2024. Trump won, and the Democrats walked away because they recognized that he won. This wasn't a close election. But I don't want to get bogged down in the politics. I want you to remember as we watch this thing, the damage that is done to the witness for Christ. Because people who see these videos being posted on a pastor's website will correctly determine that Shane Idleman is, representing Christ in the most unseemly of ways, and will want nothing to do with Jesus Christ. If you're willing to lie about this guy, then why would anybody care whatever you have to say about Jesus Christ? So let's just watch.
Yeah, so my name is Brian Mock. I'm one of the original 45 Jan 6ers that got thrown in the gulag down here back in 21.
Yeah, I just want to stop there because these clowns use the term gulag like they have any idea what they're talking about. A gulag was a forced labor camp during Soviet era, like Stalin. Like this is a picture of the forced labor camp that's called a gulag. What these people had was a prison. They went to prison because when you commit crimes in this country, you go to prison. It's not a resort. It's a prison, but it's certainly not a gulag. By the way, he's going to get into the fact that he apparently was in solitary confinement. I tried to research. I couldn't find any reporting on it, but normally you do something to get put into solitary confinement. And by the way, if he wishes to now be an advocate for ending solitary confinement, that'd be great. But he is never going to do that because he thinks that probably that's, perfectly reasonable for the other types of criminals, like black people, but certainly not him because he views himself somehow as just a political prisoner.
22. Tortured by our government to turn over.
When you say you were tortured, give us some details. What do you mean tortured? The government doesn't torture people. Come on, man. This is the United States of America.
They literally deprived us of every single constitutional right that we have.
Yeah, you didn't have any in the jail. You were getting ready for trial, but you kept putting it off. So you had to stay in jail because that was your choice. Jail is not a country club. You don't walk around there just like exuding your constitutional rights. You do what you're told, and if you don't do what you're told, you end up in solitary. Now, again, reasonable people can have a reasonable conversation about whether or not solitary confinement is, a useful form of imprisonment or not. But, there's no way this guy is going to be an advocate for ending solitary confinement.
I was defending myself against the government, and all I had to do that with was a pen, a piece of paper, and a pocket constitution that I had bartered with another guy to get.
I think you left out. Here's just so we get the background. A Minnesota man who repeatedly attacked police officers during the U.S. Capitol riot wielded a police baton as a weapon, stole 2 riot shields, and was sentenced on Thursday to 3 years in prison. Brian Mock helped remove. So he was actually already sentenced to prison. So he wasn't. I'm sure that the trial that he kept putting off was the appeal trial. Brian Mock, 44, helped remove 2 police barricades before he assaulted 4 officers during January 6th. He shoved one officer in the chest, knocked him onto the ground, where other rioters kicked and hit him. Mock asked for leniency, and he said, "I'm not someone who showed up in tactical gear with tasers and bear spray. It's a moment I got caught up in." So remember that quote as we continue to watch this video, because clearly he's quite proud of what he did. And the judge was like, "I think it's kind of hard to think that you came simply as a bystander." So imagine, again, they had barricades set up on January 6th, and the rioters broke through them. He broke through 2 of the barricades, assaulted 4 officers, wielded a baton against them, and a Christian pastor is saying, "Wow, check this out."
When I demanded my discovery, they sprayed me, they beat me, and they threw me into solitary confinement for over 100 days straight.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that the prison administration has a different opinion, that he probably was not just politely asking for his discovery. I don't even know what that means. I believe he represented himself, if I'm not mistaken, which is probably why he ended up getting convicted. Because only idiots represent themselves in this country. You need to have a lawyer.
All of this in an effort to get me to say that Donald Trump was responsible for what happened on January 6th, which was an utter lie. They deprived us of food. They deprived us of water. For punitive reasons, for up to 3 days at a time, they shut down water and cells.
Hold on, hang on. Tell people what solitary. Look, I was in a cell block in a cell. The shoe is nothing compared to what you tell. What solitary confinement is, what, and how does it work on you psychologically?
Solitary confinement, anything over 15 days by international standards is considered torture. Reason being.
Great. So now I expect Brian Mock to be a tireless advocate against the use of solitary confinement in prisons. But you won't hear that once again, because the issue for Brian Mock is that it happened to him, and he felt it shouldn't have happened to him. But unfortunately, that's not the way the system works. You commit a crime, you go to trial, you get convicted, you go to jail. Well, depending, of course, on what the sentence is. And assaulting police officers in the middle of a riot, chances are you're going to jail.
Is they put you in a cell where you have 5 steps that you can take. Think about living in your bathroom without the ability to shower. You never see a person, your little slot in the door opens up on occasion and some crappy food comes through. They are supposed to do that 3 times a day.
So I'm not sure if he thought he was at a Club Med, that the food was going to be top notch. I don't know whether he thought the prison, you get a menu and you're like, oh, I think I'll have the grilled asparagus tonight. It doesn't happen that way. And again, there was no care about these conditions when the people were the prisoners that he's used to seeing on TV, the black people, or the people who don't speak his language. But now that he's the one on the end of the gun of justice, suddenly everything is out of bounds. Once again, this is being posted on somebody's webpage who claims to be a pastor.
Day, rarely did I see that actually happen 3 times in a day. You would walk 5 steps, turn around, 5 steps, turn around, and you would try not to think about your kids. You try not to think about the girlfriend that left you. You try not to think about your house being lost, your job gone, your reputation, the fact that all of America thinks that you're these evil insurrectionists when we did nothing but stand up and get attacked by our government.
I don't think the government was the one wielding the baton that day, Mr. Mock. I believe that was you. I believe the videos and the pictures prove it. I believe that you had your day in court and you lost. You were convicted. So this revisionist history, why is this on the page of a pastor claiming and lending truth to it? Not even presenting the other side, which would be, what's on the truth. As long as it fits Shane Idleman's pre-bias, then he reposts it.
Through that process, you start to go insane. There's absolutely nobody in this planet that can sit and take solitary confinement. Your brain starts to go crazy. You think that you are dead at some point.
By the way, it sounds absolutely horrible. I could not imagine having to sit in a 5x5 cell with no external stimulus, if you will. And the only break you have is 3 crappy meals, as he says. I couldn't imagine it. I believe everything he's saying here. The piece that's missing is why he was there. So I really would be interested to hear what the prison administration has to say, because normally I'm pretty sure things like deciding which prisoners go into solitary confinement is based upon certain criteria. And I'm sure that there's a record of it somewhere. So hopefully somebody does some reporting on it at some point. But I'm relatively sure it's based upon something Mr. Mock did. It's not like he walked into prison and said, "Yes, sir," and they just threw him into solitary confinement. I find that very difficult to believe.
You ask what happened. If you don't have God in those moments, you will go insane. And at one point, I broke down and asked God, why me? Of all these people that went to Jan 6, why was I the one that ended up in solitary like this? And he answered me. He had answered me twice in solitary when I prayed. And he said simply, because you can endure.
I don't mean to, come against what people may believe. But maybe God did speak to him and give him that encouragement to endure it. But the problem again is that, and I'm assuming maybe this might be the reason why Shane posted it. Wow, take a listen to this. That doesn't change the fact that he's guilty of sin. Okay, it doesn't change the fact, and that's why it's probably unlikely that that it's not unlikely that God may have said it to him to get him to endure it if it makes him repent and come to Christ. But it's highly unlikely that God was using him in that capacity for some purpose. And that's the inference that's surrounding all of this. Okay, it's to Christianize crime. Okay, and the NAR, including Shane, are real fond of quoting Romans 13 when it suits their purposes. Okay, oh well, it's the authorities are just there to protect us against evil. Well, I hate to break it to you, Mr. Mock is the evil that they're supposed to protect us against, and that's exactly what they did. So if Mr. Mock feels that he somehow got an unfair trial, that's what the appeals process is for. And he was in the middle of the appeals process, and he purposely stalled his time in jail, knowing full well that Donald Trump would come in and pardon him anyway. But the pardon doesn't mean that he didn't commit the crime. It just means that he doesn't have to get punished for it. So he's still guilty as sin. And he has this video is absurd, number one. And number two, it has no business being on a Christian pastor's Facebook page.
And that was when That was when I knew there was no way in hell that I was going to roll over and take a plea deal. When they offered me 30 to 36 months and begged me, my lawyer begged me to take a plea deal, I fired him.
Now, I mean, obviously, no one's inside the conversation between him and his lawyer. But if his lawyer's begging him to take the plea deal, the 30 to 36 months, it would seem to me that would probably be indicative of the fact that he was guilty and that the offer was probably the best chance that he had outside of the pardon, of course. And then, of course, he fires his lawyer, he represents himself, and he gets convicted, and it's everybody else's fault except for him. You know, he's acting as if like he just went to January 6th as a tourist. What do you do? Accidentally pick up the baton, start accidentally trying to beat cops to death? Please.
I turned it down. They hit me with a superseding indictment. They charged me the 1512. They tacked on 2 more BS charges.
Yeah, but you got convicted.
It took me up to a sentencing guideline range of 20 years when I rolled into court.
Which is why the lawyer was recommending you take the 30 to 36 months. Okay, which is like 3.5 years. You're probably out in 1.5, as opposed to a 20-year sentence. The only reason why Brian MAGA is not doing 20 years in jail is because Donald Trump pardoned him. That's the only reason. Didn't change any of the underlying facts.
Hold it. And this was all, I want to make sure everybody understands this. They were this was in D.C., right, Robert? And this was solely to do one thing, to get you to rat out Donald Trump, correct? If you had done that, you walked out. All that torture, solitary confinement, all of it.
Yep. It was all designed. If they told us all we had to do was sign a piece of paper that said, yes, we're guilty, Donald Trump told us to do it, and they would take us out of that facility. And
you see what they're prepared to do to destroy Trump?
Do you see the idolatry in action? First of all, there's no substantiation of this charge. I have no idea what plea deal was offered other than they admitting their guilt. It'd be real interesting to hear the other side and what it is that the deal that they had made, or the offer they had made, rather. But chances are, since very little of what Mr. MAGA has said in this presentation is remotely true, I'm doubting severely this exaggerated version of, well, we'll let you out if you say Donald Trump did it. Okay? They didn't need him to say Donald Trump did it. Donald Trump did it. The entire January 6th commission agreed that he did it. He got impeached because he did it.
They'll take any American and they will use any American they will destroy them to try to get to Trump. No doubt in your mind?
Oh, 100%. I'm considered one of the worst of January 6th. My sole crime, when I was leading officers off the Lower West Terrace and patting them on the back and helping them away, one officer threatened to shoot me. I've got it on video. You can hear from the body cam next to it. He threatened to shoot me. I've said the same thing from day one. It took me 3 years to find the video. That officer threatened to shoot me. Split-second reaction, I went out like this, pushed a shield. He happened to be standing on another one that was discarded. He slipped and fell. But what happened was...
And then he leaves out the part that after he slipped and fell, the other rioters that were with Brian MAGA, the peaceful guys, continued to beat and pummel the cop that he pushed to the ground. So it's a convenient little story that for some reason, this one police officer threatened to shoot him. And I don't know, by the way, if that's true or not. Even if it is, maybe you shouldn't be rioting. Again, you were not a tourist. You came there with a purpose of, and we're going to show a video from January 6th. So just because people need to remember what happened on that day so that they don't fall for this bovine excrement rewriting of history by people. This guy was turned in by his son. That's how guilty of sin he was. He told his son before he left for D.C. that day that he may die. Why would you do that if you were just going for a friendly visit?
MSN, NBC, CNN, you name it, was lined up here. They took that image, and for 6 months they built a full fake case against me and took still frame pictures. That's what you've seen. Everything you've seen of January 6th, 100% is false. I've seen all the videos. They literally take these little still frames and they have changed timestamps and doctored this.
and the planes never went into the building on 9/11. Those were just holograms. And I mean, you can these conspiratorial, nonsensical arguments. Okay, they didn't change anything. And you know how we know that they didn't change anything? Because we watched it live in real time. January 6th was not some kind of black shadow operation that nobody was aware of until the media said, "Hey, take a look at this." We watched it unfold on TV live as it happened. Nobody edits like that. Nobody edits that fast to take snippets of still frames. This guy is lying through his teeth because he knows he is guilty as sin. And that's okay, because we believe in the justice of God. One day he'll stand before Christ and he'll answer for everything that he's done. But why is Shane Idleman posting this as if it's true?
The Jan 6 committee literally left 120 minutes out of the entire record to fool the American people into believing that there was an insurrection.
You think this is the reason? You think this is the reason they went on their belly and begged for pardons out of the White House?
Oh, absolutely,
Which
absolutely.
They
had to. These people committed.
That's just another lie. I mean, Biden pardoned everybody under the sun on his way out, but the notion that the Jan 6 committee asked for the pardons or went crawling on their belly is just a right-wing BS talking point, which again now is on a pastor's page.
Crimes. This is the single biggest conspiracy in U.S. history. When the facts come forward, you have to demand right now that we get a real Jan 6 investigation led by Jan 6ers who know exactly what the hell.
I just want to make sure you understand what he just advocated for. I mean, I understand that he doesn't like the real Jan 6 committee because they dealt with the truth of what he did. So he wants a new January 6th investigation to be headed up by the criminals from January 6th. I would say that that's Orwellian, but that's, an insult to George Orwell. This is insane, okay? And we're not supposed to stand for insanity and stupidity and deceit as Christians, okay? You can have all the political opinions you want. Shane Idleman is free to, vote and decide who he thinks is a lesser evil. What he is not allowed to do is this nonsense, is to post things that lead people to believe things that are factually, absurdly ridiculous.
We want to hear that.
Yeah, so my name is Brian MAGA.
All right, so that was that video. Before we sign off, this is only 5 minutes, and I'm probably not going to interrupt it too much. But the further we get away from 2021, the more this becomes kind of like, just a distant memory. And the more we hear people like Brian Mock and Steve Bannon and Shane Idleman try to rewrite history, the easier it becomes to forget exactly what happened on that day. and again, we can make the argument from a secular human perspective, but I'm making it from a Christian perspective because that's who I talk to. If you think that what happened on that day was remotely Christian, okay, and don't lose sight of the fact that once they breached the Capitol, and you'll see them breaching the Capitol here and storming in and completely almost killing police officers. They stopped in the well of the Senate after they defecated in it to pray to Jesus, to thank him for the success that they had that day in committing all of these crimes and violence. That's what the NAR cult does to the mind. And if you happen to be watching this and you're not necessarily saved or Christian, this is not indicative of the teachings of Jesus Christ. But we should never forget this day, because this day was started by a president who had lost by 7 million votes, and he was trying to cling to power no matter how he could. And he tried to send a mob to the Capitol to commit an insurrection and stop the peaceful transfer of power. There's no denying it. I don't want to hear your nonsense. I don't want to hear your whataboutisms. We all saw it, and in case you forgot.
Hey, brother, we're boots on the ground here. We're moving on to Capitol now. I'll give you a boots on the ground update here in a few.
capital injury. Multiple capital injury. Fuck you, police!
Sorry about the language.
We're still taking metal, sharpened objects, missiles to include bottles and rocks, and hand-thrown chemical-grade fireworks.
I did nothing.
This is now effectively a riot.
1349 hours declaring it a riot.
That's your Capitol building. They're breaking into the windows. The peaceful protesters like Ryan Moore.
Okay, guys. Apparently, the tip of the spear has entered the Capitol building.
That's some of the politicians running for their lives. That's a Confederate slavery flag. Just peaceful protesters.
If I give this up, they're going to have direct access. At least this Capitol we can defend. We gotta hold what we have. Take your hands off.
Yeah. The fuck?
Take your pins off.
Big tough guys. Big tough guys. They belonged in jail. Chasing down cops.
Where the fuck are they? Crucial testing has blinked. 1033. Our key 1033 has from the Capitol. We've been blinked and we've lost the light.
Jimmy, get him to the back. Get him to the back. Get him to the back. Let's get some fresh faces up front.
All right, let me out!
See the guy swinging crutches. And
Can I speak to Pelosi? Yeah, we're coming, bitch. Oh, my bitch, we're coming for you too. Fucking
hang Mike Pence. Casey thought they were joking.
They've got the gallows set outside this Capitol building. It's time to start fucking using them.
Start making a list, put all those names down, and we start hunting them down one by one.
Traitors get the guillotine.
Cities, your own counties, storm your own capital buildings, and take down every one of these corrupt motherfuckers. You fucking need to have 30,000 guns.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our...
So, what do we do with this? You know, again, we can have reasonable disagreement politically. we can believe that the current occupant of the White House was the better choice, the best choice, whatever. We're entitled to that as Americans. But we're not entitled to rewrite history. We're not entitled to call evil good as Christians. We're just not. In fact, the Bible says specifically that we're not. So, if you think the guy who attacked police officers with a baseball bat is good, if you think this guy who used a police baton, broke through 2 barricades, assaulted 4 police officers, if you think he's good, I don't know if I can help you. I really don't. What he is evil. And he shouldn't be represented as good. His own family turned him in. His own son turned him in. That's how evil he was and remains. His story in this little Steve Bannon clip is absurd. It is ridiculous. Now, I'm sure that the prison experience wasn't positive, but it's generally not positive in this country for anybody who's in prison. And, I'm sure, like I've said, I don't think he's now become an advocate for prison reform. Just for prison reform if you're a white prisoner. Because that really is what's going on here. I'm sure you'll never hear Brian Mock, going before Congress to advocate for prison reform, because it's not about that. He's latched on to the BS narrative that Trump and the Bannonites and everybody else have sold. That January 6th is these were just patriots, who just were railroaded by the government. No, they had trials. That's our system of justice. If you want to throw that away, then you throw the country away, because it's what the country's built on. He had his day in court. He lost. He lost because he was guilty. Now, he can appeal, but there's no reason to anymore because he was pardoned. And God bless. But then he doesn't get to come back out and rewrite history. And I would keep the second video handy in case you ever start slipping into the thinking that, well, maybe it wasn't as bad as people make it out to be. There are police officers who are dead today because of Brian Mock and his other rioters. There's no question about it. There's others who completely lost their careers. Like I said, one lost an eye. I can't remember the details of all the other injuries. Not to mention the assault on the very nature of our democracy. So, all that said, I wouldn't be making this video at all if Shane Idleman, who pretends to be a pastor, didn't repost it on his page. And that's not just Shane; it's the whole NAR Dominionist, camp. It is in order to be completely idolatrous, to deify the idol that is Donald Trump to Shane. This is what you must do. You must, abandon all biblical sense, all moral sense, and instead present things that are fundamentally untrue as fact. And then the end result, 14 comments, and these are people that either go to his church or follow his ministry. Sue the crap out of them. How horrible and frightening at the same time. Unbelievable, every single one of them will have their day, whether this life or the next. Absolute evil. Glad the truth is coming out. We are in a war with our own government. So what they're saying is that certain powers of the United States during that time clearly violated the rules of conduct even under the Geneva Convention. No. Thank you, Shane, for sharing this. I've known this from the very beginning, because that morning when I was watching it, I called my husband immediately and said, there's something wrong. There's something weird going on. I saw on cameras how it switched from Trump talking to all of a sudden people on the ground. And in the first video there, they were just standing there being bombed by smoke bombs and different things being shot at them. You never saw that video again. So I knew it was false. I don't know what she meant by that. I knew that they were lying from the very beginning. I'm glad it's coming out. I'm glad the truth is finally being spoken. This is like Jonestown. This is Jim Jones Kool-Aid drinkers. I wanted to come down for that day, but I felt restrained by the Lord. It's a good thing he did, right? All involved should be tried and sentenced to life in Gitmo. That's what happens when you post political lies. As a pastor, I can't emphasize that enough. It's just beyond disgusting to take the responsibility that's been given to you to lead the sheep, to preach the gospel, and to wrap it up in such hate, vitriol, and abject lies. And somewhere Shane Idleman knows. I pray he does, because if he's this deceived, there ain't no coming back from it. Every careless word. I don't expect any less from Brian Mock. I don't expect any less from a man who has no compunction at all about beating police officers with their own batons. I don't expect him. I expect him to come out afterwards and act like the victim. What I don't expect is a pastor to repost it as if it was true. Test everything, beloved. Hold fast.